you have been receiving badly. That weight sitting on your chest before your eyes are even open, that tiredness that 8 hours of sleep does not touch, and that low, quiet sound underneath your day that keeps telling you there is something you are supposed to be doing. Do not push it down again this morning. That is not anxiety. That is not guilt. That is a delivery notice, and it has your name on it, and it has been reissued more times than you know. There is a task waiting for you tomorrow morning, and the reason you have not opened it is not the reason you have been given. Maybe the last 72 hours have carried a strange pressure that did not match anything happening in your life. Nothing broke, nothing changed. Nobody said anything cruel to you. And still, something has felt like it is standing directly behind you, waiting for you to turn around. Perhaps a thought came to you in the middle of something completely ordinary, while you were washing a dish or putting fuel in the car, and you set it aside because it seemed far too small to be God. Maybe a name surfaced that you have not thought about in years, and you wondered for a second, why that name? Why now? Perhaps you started something this week, put it down after 4 minutes, and could not explain to yourself why you stopped. Or maybe you have been waking somewhere near 3 in the morning with your heart moving faster than the room deserves, and you have been calling it stress, when the truth is that 3 in the morning is simply the only hour in your entire day when nothing at all is defending the door. Hear this clearly, because everything else in this message stands on it. You have not been ignoring the task. You have been unable to read it. And there is a reason the pressure has increased specifically now, in this exact season, in these exact weeks. Whatever has been working against your life has never once been afraid of your intentions. Your intentions have been good for 20 years, and nothing feared them. What is feared is your accuracy. An unfocused, chosen one can be managed for decades, without any difficulty at all. A chosen one who can suddenly read what is being placed into their hands cannot be managed for a single week. That is what is being defended against. That is what the interference has been about. Not your faith, which was never in question. Your legibility. You are not behind because you lacked faith. You are behind because you were listening for volume when you were being sent precision. Within the next 24 hours, the guilt you have been carrying about all the things you were supposed to do and somehow did not do can begin to loosen its grip on you. Not because it is being excused, because it was never accurate in the first place. You chose to stay when leaving would have been far easier. You chose to keep your voice low when you had every right in the world to raise it. You chose to keep showing up for a life that had stopped applauding you a very long time ago. Now think back to one specific moment this week. A moment when something inside you moved toward an action, a phone call, a sentence you almost said, a decision you almost made, and you felt that pull clearly for about 2 seconds, and then it passed, and you went on with your day and never thought about it again. You thought that was a passing thought. It was the task, arriving in the only form it has ever taken. It was not vague, because heaven is vague. It was brief, because you have been receiving in a very narrow band for most of your adult life, and a narrow band turns a complete instruction into 2 seconds of pressure and nothing else. That is the 4th time it has come to you. And tomorrow morning, there is a window where it comes again. I need you to stay with me through this message, and I want to be honest with you about why. Not because the words are beautiful, because there are 3 things you are going to need before tomorrow morning arrives, and none of them are things you can guess your way into. The first is the actual shape of the task, not the abstract idea of purpose, which you have heard about your entire life, and which has never once told you what to do on a Tuesday. The specific shape, what it looks like when it arrives, what size it is, what it feels like in the body, and why the shape it takes is the exact shape your filter has been trained to discard. The second is the record of the 3 times it already came. You are going to be able to name them, not because I know your life, because the pattern is the same in every single person this happens to. And once the pattern is described, the memories come back on their own, and they come back with dates attached. And the third is the reason your reception narrowed in the first place. This is the part almost nobody says out loud. And it is the part that turns this from an inspiring message into something you can actually do something about. What happened to your ability to hear is not a spiritual failure. It has a mechanism. It has a history. It began before you were old enough to consent to it. And a mechanism, unlike a moral failing, can be reversed. If you stop this message before that third part, you will walk away encouraged and still unable to read tomorrow morning. Encouragement without mechanism is how 20 years disappear. So, let me tell you who this is actually for, and let me be precise, because this is not for everyone who happens to hear it. This is for the person who has quietly concluded that they must be spiritually defective, who watches other people describe hearing clearly from God and feels something between envy and shame, and then covers that feeling quickly because it seems ungrateful, who has read the books, prayed the prayers, sat in the services, gone forward when the invitation was given, and still walks out into the parking lot with the same silence they walked in with. This is for the person who is not lazy and has been called lazy, who is not slow and has been treated as slow, who has an entire second life running underneath the visible one, full of things they were going to do, things they meant to start, things that felt urgent for an afternoon and then dissolved, and who has come to believe that this pile of unfinished movements is evidence of a weak character. It is not evidence of a weak character, it is evidence of interrupted transmission, and there is a very large difference between a person who will not act and a person who never received a clear enough instruction to act on. From the outside, these two people look identical. They get the same advice, they get the same sermons, they get told to try harder, to be more disciplined, to want it more. And that advice works beautifully for the first person and does absolutely nothing for the second, because you cannot discipline your way into hearing something that arrived below the threshold. You have been given the first person's medicine for the second person's condition for years by people who loved you and meant well. There is a name for the space between the moment an instruction is released and the moment a person recognizes it. I want you to hold this name because we are going to come back to it several times before this message is finished. The obedience gap. Not the disobedience gap, the obedience gap. The distance is not made of refusal, it is made of latency. The instruction goes out, and somewhere between release and reception, it thins. And by the time it reaches your awareness, it has become a mood instead of a message, a restlessness instead of a sentence, a feeling that something is off instead of a clear direction pointing at one specific thing. And here is what that gap does to a person over time, which is the part that matters more than the mechanics. It teaches you to distrust yourself. Every time you feel a pull and cannot act on it because it is too faint to act on, a small piece of your confidence in your own inner life goes away. Do that 400 times over 15 years and you arrive exactly where you are now. Not faithless, something worse and quieter. Self-doubting in the specific area where you were designed to be most certain. That is the real cost, not the missed opportunities, though there have been some. The erosion of your own authority over your own knowing. Take a breath with me for a second, a real one. Let your shoulders drop about an inch from where they have been sitting since you woke up, because I want you to feel something before we go further, and you cannot feel it while you are braced. Nothing you did in the dark fell to the ground. Not the year you held a family together while nobody once asked how you were doing. Not the job you stayed in past the point of reason because leaving would have cost someone else more than it cost you. Not the prayers you prayed for people who never learned you prayed them. Not the money you gave when the giving hurt. Not the forgiveness you extended silently to someone who never apologized and never will. All of it was recorded, every piece. And I am telling you this now at the beginning for a specific reason. Recorded work is followed by assigned work. That is the order it has always gone in. Heaven does not hand a task to someone it has not already watched. The watching came first, and the watching is finished, and that is why the pressure changed this season. You have not been overlooked. You have been under review. Those two things feel exactly the same from the inside, and they are opposites. Now, Before we go into the shape of the task, I want to give you something you can use in the next few minutes, because I do not believe in making people wait 40 minutes for something useful. Here is the first thing. The task has never once arrived as a plan. Not for you, not for anyone. It arrives as a single next action, and it is always small enough to be completed in one sitting, and it is almost always something you already know how to do. Think about how strange that is against everything you have been taught. You have been taught to seek your calling, singular, enormous, life-defining. And so you have been standing at the window, watching the horizon for something with weight and thunder in it. And the whole time the deliveries have been coming to the side door, at ankle height, in packages so plain that you stepped over them on the way to the window. Write a sentence, make a call, say the thing at dinner, go back to the place, open the file, ask the question, apologize first, stop the thing you know is corroding you, start the 10 minutes. Every one of those looks too small to be divine. That is not a flaw in the delivery. That is the security on it. Because here is a thing about assignments that nobody explains. If the real task arrived in a form your ego could recognize as important, your ego would take it, and then it would be your project instead of your assignment, and it would fail in the specific way that ego projects fail. The smallness is protective. It is designed so that the only person who can receive it is a person who has stopped needing it to be impressive. So the filter you have been running is not a moral problem either. It is a calibration problem. You calibrated your attention to catch big things, because big things are what you were told to expect, and the instrument has been dutifully filtering out every single item under a certain weight. It has been working perfectly. It has just been working with the wrong setting for about 30 years. And what happens tomorrow morning is that another item comes through, small, plain, 2 seconds wide, arriving into a window that opens before your defenses come online and closes not long after. By the end of this message, you will know how to catch it. You will know the exact hour, the exact posture, the 3 things that close the window instantly, and what to do in the first 60 seconds after it lands, so that it does not evaporate the way the last 3 did. But first you need to know why the window is in the morning at all. And to explain that I have to tell you what actually happened to your ability to receive. Because it did not fade on its own. Something specific happened. It happened to almost every adult in the modern world, and it happened so gradually that not one person noticed the moment it started. There is one more thing to settle before we go there, and it will only take a moment. Some part of you is already arguing. It is saying that this is a comfortable explanation, that it is easier to believe you could not hear than to admit you would not obey, and that people who want to feel better about themselves reach for exactly this kind of message. I want you to know that I respect that voice. It has protected you from a great deal of nonsense over the years, and it deserves a hearing. So here is the test, and you can run it yourself in about 10 seconds. Think of one thing you genuinely refused, something you knew clearly, in words, with no ambiguity at all, and chose not to do. Most people can find one. Now hold it next to the pile of things that merely dissolved, the 2-second pulls, the 4-minute starts, the names that surfaced and sank. Look at the size of the 2 piles. If the first pile were the problem, it would be the bigger one. It is not. It is almost never bigger. For nearly everyone who feels the way you feel, the refusal pile has 3 or 4 items in it across an entire lifetime, and the dissolved pile has hundreds. You have been building your entire self-assessment on the smaller pile because it is the only one anyone ever taught you to look at. That is not self-forgiveness, that is arithmetic. When you were 4 years old, you did not have a reception problem. I want you to sit with that for a moment, because it is not a sentimental statement, it is a measurable one. At 4, you knew things about the adults in your house that nobody told you. You knew which room to avoid before you knew why. You knew when someone smiling was not actually happy. You made connections between things that had no business being connected, and you were right often enough that the adults found it unsettling and called it imagination. You also learned at a speed that you would find impossible now. An entire language, from nothing, without a textbook, without effort, without once feeling like you were studying. You absorb the grammar of your mother tongue by pattern alone. If someone handed you that task today, at your current age, with your current mind, you would need years and a great deal of money, and you would still speak with an accent. Something has changed between that child and you, and the standard explanation, the one everyone accepts without examining, is that children are simply more open and adults become closed because life is hard, and that is just what growing up costs. That explanation is comfortable, and it is almost entirely wrong. What actually happened is more specific and, once you see it, far more hopeful. The child was not more spiritual than you. The child was operating in a state of whole reception, both sides of the mind working as one instrument instead of two departments. Pattern and logic, image and language, feeling and structure, all firing into the same room at the same time. That state is what makes a 4-year-old seem uncanny. It is also, and this is the part I need you to hold on to, exactly the state in which a divine instruction arrives fully formed instead of arriving as a 2-second pressure. Then formal life began, and formal life, for entirely well-meaning reasons, teaches the mind to run in one lane. Sit still, show your work, do not guess, answer in the way the form expects. 12 years of that, then more of it in the workplace, then a lifetime of a culture that rewards the narrow lane and punishes the wide one. Nothing malicious, no villain, just a very long and very consistent training program in operating at half capacity. And the thing about a gradual narrowing is that you never feel it happen. There is no morning where you wake up and notice that the channel is thinner. You simply stop having certain experiences and you assume you outgrew them. You did not outgrow them. You were tuned away from them, one small increment at a time, by a world that had no idea it was doing it. I want to give this state a name because we are going to need it later, and I do not want to keep describing it in 5 words every time. The receiver state. Everything in this message from here forward runs through that one idea, not the sender. The sender has been constant, the receiver. And once you hold the receiver in your hand as a real thing, an actual condition with an actual history rather than a vague spiritual mood, some very old questions in your life answer themselves in about 4 seconds. Why did God speak so clearly to you at 19 and go quiet at 34? Why do you hear best when you are exhausted, or grieving, or in a hospital corridor, or driving at night with no radio on? Why does everything come through in the shower? Why do the deepest things arrive in the 10 seconds before you fall asleep and then vanish before you can reach the phone? Those are not random. Every single one of those is a moment when the narrow lane momentarily gives up control. Exhaustion drops it, grief drops it, monotony drops it, the edge of sleep drops it. And the instant it drops, the wide state returns for a few seconds, and something comes through, and you call it a nice thought. You have been getting a clear signal in the exact windows where your training stops interfering. That is not a mystery, that is a diagnosis, and diagnoses are good news, because you cannot treat a mystery. Chosen one, that is the ground we are standing on. Everything else builds on it. Now let me tell you how to recognize that this is happening to you specifically, and not just to people in general, because general truths change nothing, and specific ones change everything. It usually starts in the body, and it starts before anything reaches your thoughts. A weight across the upper chest that has been checked by a doctor and found to be nothing. A jaw that has been tight for so long, you have stopped registering it as tight. Hands that go cold in the middle of an ordinary conversation. A pressure at the base of the skull that arrives in the late afternoon. Sleep that begins fine and breaks apart at the same hour every night for weeks with no cause. Then it moves into the emotions, and it moves in a very particular way. Not sadness exactly. Something more like impatience with things you used to tolerate easily. Small talk becoming physically difficult. A sudden inability to sit through entertainment you used to enjoy. Tears arriving at strange triggers. A song in a store. A stranger being kind to their child and not arriving at all for things that should reasonably produce them. a restlessness that gets worse when you rest. Then the dreams change. Not necessarily dramatic dreams, vivid ones, dreams with architecture. Rooms you have never been in that feel completely familiar. People from 20 years ago showing up with nothing to say, just present. Repeated dreams of a house with more rooms than you remembered. Waking with a sentence in your mouth that you did not compose. And then, finally, the outside starts moving. The same number appears more times in a week than probability allows. Someone you were thinking about calls. A door you had been pushing on for 2 years opens without you touching it, and another one that you thought was your only option closes so completely that you cannot even mourn it. Relationships thin out, not through conflict, through quiet. If you have been nodding through most of that, I want you to understand what you have just done. You have not identified with a horoscope. You have described a nervous system attempting to expand faster than the setting it has been running on will allow. Every one of those symptoms is friction between an old calibration and a new demand. And here is where I want to shift something in you, and it may be the single most useful sentence in the first half of this message. You have been auditioning, you have not been assigned. Read that again slowly. You have been living like someone who is applying for the calling, trying to demonstrate worth, waiting for a confirmation that will finally allow you to begin. Building a case for yourself, before God, out of your effort, your consistency, your sacrifices, your prayer life. The years you stayed faithful when nothing happened, but the assignment was issued before the audition started. That is the actual sequence. It was issued, and it has been sitting in delivery, and every attempt you have made to earn it has been sincere and unnecessary, and has cost you enormous amounts of energy that were needed elsewhere. Think of what changes if that is true. You stop treating each day as an evaluation. You stop reading every difficulty as a judgment on your fitness. You stop asking whether you are ready, because readiness is not a criterion for something already assigned. You start asking a completely different question, and it is a far better question. Not, am I worthy of this? But what came in today, and did I catch it? The person who is auditioning tries to be impressive. The person who is assigned tries to be accurate. Those two lives look identical for the first 6 months and completely different after 2 years. And I know what rises up when someone says that. It rises up in almost everyone at this exact point. The thought is something like this. If it was already assigned, then all the years of trying were wasted, and that is unbearable, so I would rather believe I was still earning it. Hear me. The years were not wasted, but they were not payment either. They were formation. There is a difference between paying for something and being shaped so you can carry it. And the reason the difference matters is that payment ends when the price is met, while formation ends when the shape is right. You have been treating your life as an invoice. It has been a workshop, and workshops have a final day. Chosen one. There is a boy in the old record who had exactly the condition we are describing, and almost nobody reads his story this way. His name was Samuel. He was young, he was serving in the temple, and he was as close to the presence of God as a person could physically be in that era. He slept in the room where the lamp burned, and in the middle of the night, a voice called his name. He heard it. That is the part people skip. His reception was working perfectly. The signal arrived, complete, personal, using his own name. And he got up immediately, which tells you everything about his willingness. He ran to the old priest and said, "Here I am, you called me." He was wrong. He had received accurately and attributed incorrectly. And the old man sent him back to bed. It happened again. He heard, he got up, he ran, he offered himself, he was sent back. And then a third time. 3 complete deliveries, 3 immediate responses, 3 misfiles. Now think about what that boy must have felt, lying back down the third time. Confused, slightly humiliated, beginning to wonder whether something was wrong with him. 3 for 3 on willingness, and 0 for 3 on outcome, and no way to see why. Nothing was wrong with his heart. Nothing was wrong with his ears. He had never been taught what the voice sounds like when it is not a person in the next room. He had a framework problem, not a faith problem. and the frameworks we inherit determine what we are capable of recognizing. The fourth time, everything changed, not because God spoke louder. The text gives no indication that the fourth call was any different in volume or clarity than the first three. What changed was that someone finally told him what he was hearing and gave him one small instruction for what to do when it came again. Speak, for your servant is listening. That is all it took. A correction to the receiver, not a correction to the sender, and not a correction to the boy. And every single thing he became afterward, every word he carried, every king he anointed, the entire arc of a life that redirected a nation, all of it sat on the far side of a fourth call. That would have been a fourth failure if nobody had explained the mechanism to him. I want you to hold that against your own life for a second, because I do not think you have been given the fourth call yet in the way he was. You have had the first three, the pulls that dissolved, the names that surfaced, the 4-minute starts. You responded to every one of them with the same willingness the boy had, and you got the same result he got, and like him, you have quietly concluded that the problem is you. The problem is not you. Nobody has explained the mechanism to you. That is what this morning is for. And notice one more thing about that story, because it protects you from a mistake that a lot of sincere people make here. The boy did not fix his own reception through effort. He did not fast harder or pray longer or search himself for hidden sin. Someone told him what was happening and gave him a posture. The fix was information plus position, and it took less than a minute to install. Almost every genuinely stuck spiritual life I have ever encountered has been stuck on information plus position, and almost every attempted solution has been effort. That is why the effort has not worked. You have been trying to force a door that was never locked, only mislabeled. Before we go further into what tomorrow morning actually requires, I want to name something honestly. Some messages simply inform you and you move on with your day. Others do something else. And if something has already moved in you while you have been listening, there is a reason for that, and it is not the words. There is a resource I want to mention once here, and then leave alone until much later, because it belongs to the part of this that deals with the receiver rather than the sender. It is a short daily practice built by a physician, and its entire purpose is to bring both halves of the mind back into the synchronized state we have been describing. I am not going to explain it now. It sits in the description below and in the pinned comment if you want to look before I get there. We will come back to it when it is time, and not before. So let us go into the first thing you need before tomorrow morning, which is the actual shape of the task. I said earlier that it always arrives small. I want to now show you exactly why. Because if you only believe it, you will forget it by Thursday. And if you understand the mechanism, you will never be able to unsee it again. Start with what you already know from your own life. Think of any genuinely significant change you have ever made, not the ones you planned on a page, the ones that actually happened. If you trace any of them back far enough, you will not find a decision. You will find a very small movement that seemed like nothing at the time, a conversation you almost did not have, a message you nearly deleted before sending, a day you drove a different way home for no reason, a book someone left on a table, a single sentence you said out loud that you had never said out loud before. None of those felt like turning points while they were happening. Every one of them was. Now hold that against the way you have been searching. You have been scanning your life for the arrival of something obviously significant, because that is what significance is supposed to look like. And the entire history of your own transformation says that significance has never once announced itself in advance, not in your life and not in anyone else's. Here is the mechanism underneath that, and it is the part almost nobody says. An instruction has to pass through you to become anything. It is not delivered to a warehouse. It is delivered to a person, and that person carries it, and the carrying is what shapes it into an event, which means the delivery has to be sized for the carrier at the moment of delivery, not for the outcome it will eventually become. Think about how a seed works, because this is not a metaphor. It is the same principle operating in a different material. Everything the tree will ever be is inside the seed. The height, the shade, the fruit, the 60 years of standing through weather. But the seed does not arrive tree-sized. If it arrived tree-sized, it could not be planted, it could not be carried, it could not go into the ground, and the ground is the only place the size can be released. The smallness of the seed is not a limitation on the tree, it is the delivery mechanism for the tree. And this is where your filter has been quietly destroying things for years. Because a filter trained to catch importance is by definition trained to measure incoming items against a template of what important things look like. And every template of importance any of us carries was built from finished outcomes. We have seen the tree. We have read the biographies. We have heard the testimonies given 20 years after the fact, when the person telling it can see the whole arc and describes it as a calling. Nobody tells the story of the afternoon they nearly did not make the phone call. It does not survive the retelling. It is too small to be interesting. So the template we all carry is a template built exclusively out of trees, and we are all standing at the door checking arrivals against it, and every single arrival is a seed, which means the filter is not failing occasionally. It is failing at close to 100% structurally by design, and it has been doing so quietly your whole adult life while you concluded that nothing was arriving. Let me give this its name, because you will need to be able to say it to yourself tomorrow morning. The small door. Everything comes through the small door. Not sometimes, every time. And the small door is not hidden, it is not locked, and it is not guarded. It is simply so unimpressive that a person watching the main gate will never once glance at it. And now I want to show you the second layer of this, which is the part that turns it from an interesting observation into something that will actually change how tomorrow goes. The smallness is protective, and it is protecting you from a very specific failure. Consider what would happen if the assignment arrived in a form your mind could immediately recognize as important. What is the first thing that would occur inside you? Not obedience. Identity. You would become a person with a significant assignment, and the moment that happens, the thing stops being something you carry and becomes something you are, and everything you do with it from then on is contaminated by the need for it to succeed in a way that reflects on you. You have watched this happen. Everyone has. A person receives what they believe is a great calling, and within 18 months the calling is a public identity, and that identity needs feeding, and the original instruction is somewhere underneath it all, unrecognizable, still unexecuted. The smallness is a filter running in the other direction. It ensures that the only people who can receive the assignment are the people who no longer require it to be impressive. That is not a barrier keeping you out. That is the qualification you have been unknowingly earning for years. Every time life humbled you, every time you served something nobody clapped for, every time you did the right thing in a room where it produced no return at all. You did not fail those seasons. Those seasons were installing the only receiver capable of accepting a seed without insulting it. So here is the practical shape, and I want you to actually memorize this, because tomorrow morning it is going to matter. The task will arrive as a single action, not a direction, not a theme, not a purpose. One action with a verb in it. It will be completable. Whatever it is, you will be able to finish it in one sitting, in one conversation, in one afternoon at the very most. If what arrives cannot be completed, it is not the task. It is your anxiety wearing the task as a costume, and anxiety is always enormous and never specific. It will be something you already know how to do. There will be no new skill required. This trips people constantly, because we assume a divine assignment must exceed our capacity in order to require faith. It does not exceed your capacity. It exceeds your comfort, which is a completely different thing and much harder. It will be slightly embarrassing, not humiliating, slightly. There will be a small flinch in it, a mild sense of exposure, a reason you would rather not. That flinch is one of the most reliable identifying marks there is, because the flinch is exactly what has kept the item unaddressed until now, and it will feel disappointingly obvious. When it lands, there will be a moment where you think, that is it, that is all. I already knew that. Yes, you already knew it. Knowing was never the missing part. Before we do that, I want to stay one more minute on the flinch, Because it is the single most practical identifying mark I can hand you, and most people underestimate it. The flinch is not fear. Fear is loud, and it is about outcomes. The flinch is quiet, and it is about exposure. Fear says this might go badly. The flinch says someone will see me trying. And the flinch is reliable precisely because it is the reason the item is still sitting there. Anything genuinely easy for you, you would have already done. It would not still be circling. The fact that a small, completable, already known action has survived years of circulation inside you without ever being executed tells you that something is guarding it. And what guards small things is almost never danger. It is dignity. The call you have not made, the person you have not thanked properly, because thanking them properly means admitting how much you needed them. The thing you would have to say out loud about yourself in order to ask for what you need. The apology that would require you to go first when you were not the only one wrong. The work you would have to show someone before it is good. Every one of those is small. Every one of those is completable. Every one of those is something you already know how to do. And every one of those has been sitting in you for a very long time, protected by a flinch you have been reading as wisdom. There was a woman who wrote to me some time ago, and I am going to tell you her situation because it is more useful than anything abstract I could say here. She had spent 9 years believing that God had gone quiet on her. 9 years. She had done everything a sincere person does. She changed churches twice. She fasted. She kept a journal of prayers and went back through it looking for patterns. She read the books people recommend, and she did not find herself in any of them. And in the middle of all that, there was one thing she thought about roughly once a week for those entire 9 years. Her sister. They had not spoken since an argument about their mother's care, and both of them had been right about something and wrong about something, and the years had gone by the way years do. She never once counted that as a spiritual matter. It was family. It was a private sorrow. It sat in a completely different drawer in her mind, from the drawer marked, "God is not speaking to me." It came back once a week for 9 years, 400 and something separate deliveries, all of them filed as sadness. When she finally made the call, and it took her under an hour including the crying, 2 things happened. The first is obvious. Her sister had been waiting, as the other person almost always has been. The second is the one I want you to hear. Within about 3 weeks, she said, other things started coming through. Not because a reward was issued, because a channel that had been carrying one unanswered instruction on repeat for 9 years finally cleared, and a channel carrying one thing on repeat cannot carry anything else. That is the part nobody tells you about unfinished assignments. They do not simply sit there costing nothing. They occupy the line. Every undelivered instruction in your life is holding bandwidth, and it will keep holding it patiently for as long as it takes, because it was never going to give up and go away. You are not blocked, you are full. And that reframe alone changes what you do about it. A blocked person needs something opened, which is why so many people spend years seeking a breakthrough that never comes. A full person needs something completed, and completion is entirely within reach and usually takes under an hour. So when we go looking for the 3 that already came, do not look for the impressive ones. Look for the repeats. Look for whatever has been circling. Look for the thought that arrives at the same emotional temperature every time and never resolves. That is not rumination, that is redelivery. Now let me pace something forward for you, because I want you to feel the shape of the life on the other side of this, and not just understand the theory. Imagine 6 months from now. Nothing dramatic has happened. There has been no vision, no sign in the sky, no sudden windfall. What has changed is one single habit. When something small moves in you, you catch it, and you act inside the hour. Picture what that does to a year. 40 or 50 tiny movements, executed instead of dissolved. Most of them go nowhere visible. 8 or 9 of them connect to something. 2 of them turn out to have been doors. And now picture the version of you standing in that year. Not more spiritual, steadier. Because the thing that has been eating your confidence was never the absence of God. It was the accumulating evidence, filed silently inside you, that you feel things and do not act on them. That file has been open a long time, and it has been getting heavier, and it has been quietly informing your sense of who you are. Close that file, and something happens to your posture that other people notice before you do. Your voice changes slightly. You stop over-explaining. You become someone whose inner life and outer life are pointed the same direction, and there is no substitute for that, and there is no shortcut to it either. That is not a promise about your circumstances. It is a description of what happens to a person who stops leaking. If any part of this has landed, do something small right now. Say the word listening in the comments. One word, that is all. Not because it changes anything spiritually, because the act of putting one small deliberate thing into the world, right now, while you are in this state, is the same muscle you are going to need tomorrow morning, and it costs you 4 seconds to test it. Now, you know the shape of the task. You know why the door is small and why your filter discarded it and what the item will feel like when it arrives. Which means you are ready for the part that most people find the most unsettling and also the most useful. You are ready to go back and find the 3 that already came, because they are still there. They did not disappear. They were filed under something else, and once I give you the filing categories, they are going to come back to you with a speed that may surprise you. Here are the drawers. There are 5 of them, and everything that was ever delivered to you and not recognized is sitting in one of these 5, filed under the wrong name. The first drawer is nostalgia. Something surfaces from a long time ago. A person, a place, a version of your life, a thing you used to do before everything got heavy. And because it comes wearing the clothes of memory, you treat it as memory. You feel a soft ache, you say to yourself that those were good days, and you put it back. But notice the strangeness. Memory is supposed to be triggered. Something reminds you of something. Ask yourself, when that particular person or place surfaces, what actually triggered it? Very often there is nothing. It simply arrived, unprompted, in the middle of a task that had no connection to it whatsoever. Unprompted memory that returns repeatedly is not memory, it is a pointer. Something in that direction is unfinished, and the mind is handing you the file over and over because it has been told to. The second drawer is guilt. This is the heaviest one and the most commonly misread. There is a category of guilt that is genuinely about wrongdoing, and it behaves in a particular way. It has an object. It is about a specific act. It responds to repentance and it settles. And then there is the other kind, guilt with no crime attached, a low-grade sense of being behind, of owing something, of having failed at an assignment you cannot name. It does not respond to repentance, because there is nothing to repent of. It does not settle no matter how much you pray about it, and it returns most strongly, not when you have done something wrong, but when you have been still, or rested, or had a good day. That second kind is not guilt at all. That is an undelivered instruction registering as pressure. Your system knows something is outstanding. It cannot name what, so it names the only thing it has a category for, which is fault. And you have then spent years apologizing to God for a bill you do not owe, while the actual item sits unopened. Test it this way. Real guilt gets lighter when you confess it. This other thing gets lighter only when you move. If prayer does not touch it, and one small action does, you were never dealing with sin. You were dealing with delivery. The third drawer is envy. You see someone doing something and something sharp goes through you. It is unpleasant, so you correct it immediately. You tell yourself to be happy for them, and you move on and think slightly less of yourself for having felt it. Stop doing that. Envy is one of the most accurate instruments you own, and you have been taught to disable it the moment it activates. Notice that you do not envy everyone. There are 1,000 impressive people whose lives produce nothing in you at all. You feel that sharpness for a very narrow band of things, and that band is astonishingly consistent across your whole life if you ever look at it honestly. The sharpness is recognition. It is the sound your own unlived material makes when it sees itself in someone else. It is not a moral failure, it is a location signal, and the fact that it hurts is simply the cost of looking directly at something you have deferred. So do not repent of it. Read it. What exactly were they doing? Not their outcome, their action. Strip away the money, the audience, the recognition, What was the actual verb? That verb has your name on it. The fourth drawer is irritation. There is a specific thing that has annoyed you for years. A situation nobody is fixing. A way people do something badly that you cannot stop noticing. A gap that seems obvious to you and invisible to everyone else. Most people experience this as a personality flaw. They think they are simply critical, or difficult, or hard to please. And sometimes that is true. But there is a version of persistent irritation that is extremely specific and does not generalize. And that version is almost always an assignment, approaching from the wrong side. You notice the gap because you are the one built to notice it. The irritation is what an assignment feels like when you have not accepted it. It is the friction of standing next to something you were meant to touch and not touching it. The fifth drawer is fantasy. This is the subtlest, and it hides the longest. There is a daydream you have had for years. It does not change much. It has details in it that have stayed stable for a decade. You have never told anyone about it in full, and if you did, you would laugh while telling it, which is the standard way people protect something they care about. Ordinary fantasy drifts. It follows whatever you saw last week. It responds to circumstances. It upgrades itself when your taste upgrades. What does not drift is not fantasy. A stable, repeating, decade-long inner image is not your imagination amusing itself. It is a blueprint that has been shown to you so many times that you stopped seeing it. Nostalgia, guilt, envy, irritation, fantasy, 5 drawers. Go through them tonight, and I will tell you what will happen, because it happens to nearly everyone who does this honestly. You will not find one item, you will find 3 or 4, and they will all point at the same place. That is the moment people usually go quiet, because the drawers are supposed to be unrelated. Nostalgia and irritation have nothing to do with each other. And yet when you lay them side by side, the person who keeps surfacing, the guilt with no crime, the narrow band of envy, the gap nobody is fixing, and the daydream that never changes are all standing in a circle around one single thing. They were never 5 feelings. They were one instruction, delivered 5 different ways over many years by something patient enough to keep trying a different route every time the previous one failed. That is what I want to name now, because you have earned the name, the fourth offer. Nothing that was assigned to you was ever offered once. That is not how any of this works, and the belief that it is has caused an enormous amount of unnecessary despair in people who assume they missed their one chance at 19. An assignment is reissued. It comes through nostalgia, and you file it. It comes through irritation, and you call it a character trait. It comes through envy, and you repent of it. It comes through the daydream, and you find it charming and slightly sad. And each time, something adjusts and tries again through a different door. But I want to be honest with you about something, because I am not going to tell you it costs nothing. Each reissue costs you, not because heaven grows impatient, but because you do. Every time an instruction comes and dissolves, the part of you that would have carried it gets a little quieter, not punished, discouraged. And a discouraged receiver is harder to reach than a busy one. So, the window is not closing from the outside. Nobody is taking anything from you, and I would never tell you that they were. The narrowing is happening inside, in the confidence you have in your own capacity to know things, and that is precisely why it can be reversed. What may begin to shift within the next day or so is not whether the offer is available, it is whether you can hear it. That is the only variable that has ever been in play. And that brings us to the question you should be asking by now, and if you are not asking it yet, I want to put it in your mouth so you can carry it into the next part of this message. If the receiver narrows over time, and if the narrowing is what actually happened, then what exactly narrowed? What is the physical, describable, examinable thing that changed between the 4-year-old who knew which room to avoid and the adult who cannot tell the difference between a divine instruction and a passing thought? Because if that thing has a name, it has a shape. And if it has a shape, then the question stops being why is God silent and becomes something entirely different and far more answerable. What was taken and how does it come back? That is where we are going next. And I want to warn you before we get there, this next part is going to be uncomfortable for about 4 minutes because it involves accepting that something was done to you rather than by you, and most of us would rather be guilty than be robbed. Guilt at least leaves us in control. Stay with it anyway. What was taken was not your faith, and it was not your sensitivity. What was taken was synchronization. Let me describe it the way you can verify it in your own experience, rather than the way a textbook would. You have 2 ways of processing everything that reaches you. One of them works in sequence. It handles language, order, steps, logic, the naming of things, the building of an argument. It is careful, and it is slow, and it is extraordinarily useful. The other works all at once. It handles pattern, image, tone, whole situations, the sense of a room, the feeling that something is off before you can say why. It is fast, and it does not explain itself. Neither of those is spiritual, and neither is worldly. They are 2 halves of one instrument, and they were built to run together. Now here is the thing you can check against your own life immediately. Every experience you would describe as genuinely knowing something has both signatures in it at once. There is a picture and there is a sentence. There is a feeling and there is a specific. When it is only feeling, it is mood and it fades by lunch. When it is only sentence, it is a thought you had and it convinces nobody, not even you. The 2-second pull you have been getting for years is what a full instruction looks like after one half of the instrument has been trained to interrupt the other. Because that is what happened, not suppression of the spirit, suppression of the crosstalk. Think about what 12 years of formal education actually rewarded, not intelligence, a very specific mode of intelligence. Sit still, which removes the body from processing. Show your work, which invalidates any answer that arrived whole. Do not guess, which is a direct instruction to disregard pattern recognition. Answer in the format requested, which trains you to discard anything that did not arrive in words. Every one of those is reasonable. Every one of those is defensible. And together, they constitute a 12-year training program in which the fast half of your mind is systematically told that its outputs do not count as knowledge. Then work continues it. Justify your decision. Where is the data? What is your reasoning? All good questions in their place, and all of them teaching the same lesson, which is that if you cannot say how you know it, you do not know it. So the fast half keeps working. It never stopped. It is working right now. It just learned, over decades, to stop sending its results forward, because every time it did, they were rejected at the door. You did not lose the ability to hear. You lost the internal permission to accept what you heard as information. And now watch what that single change explains. It explains why you know things about people, and then talk yourself out of them, and then find out 6 months later you were right, and feel worse rather than better. Because being right without having acted is its own particular kind of wound. It explains why guidance never comes with reasons. You have been asking for the why, and the why is produced by the slow half, and the slow half is not the one receiving. So you get the what with no why attached, and then you refuse the what because there is no why, and then you call the whole exchange silence. It explains why the strongest impressions of your life came during the periods when your analytical mind was too tired, too overwhelmed, or too broken to run interference. The hospital corridor, the night after the funeral, the long drive, the shower. Those are not sacred locations. Those are the conditions under which the interference stops. And it explains something else, something I want to handle carefully because it touches a real grief. If you have ever felt that you were closer to God as a young person than you are now, and if you have carried a quiet fear that you drifted, that you lost your first love, that something in you hardened, I want to offer you a different reading of your own history. You were not closer, you were less trained, and the years since have not been a decline in devotion. Your devotion, if you look at it plainly, is far more durable now than it was then. What has declined is bandwidth. The 19-year-old had less faith and more reception. You have more faith and less reception, and you have been grading yourself with the wrong instrument for 20 years. Now, I want to be very clear about what this is and is not, because I have no interest in handing you a comfortable story. This is not a claim that everything you feel is from God. It is not. Much of what moves through a person is fear, appetite, old wounds asking to be refed, and the ordinary noise of being alive. Widening the channel does not make you infallible, and anybody who tells you it does is selling you something worse than a product. What widening the channel does is restore the ability to tell the difference. Discernment is not a spiritual gift that arrives whole. It is a comparison function. It requires two signals to compare, and it has to be able to hold both at once. That is precisely what a desynchronized instrument cannot do, and it is why the same people who cannot hear God clearly also tend to be the people who cannot tell their intuition from their anxiety. Those are the same deficit, wearing two different names. And that deficit is why so much sincere spiritual effort produces so little. You can pray for guidance every morning for a decade, and if the receiving instrument is running in one lane, the guidance arrives as a mood and gets filed as a mood. And at the end of the decade, you have 10 years of prayer and no record of an answer. And you draw the obvious and completely incorrect conclusion. Let me say the thing plainly. If you cannot receive it, more of it does not help. That is not a small statement. It reorganizes the whole strategy, because if the constraint is on the receiving side, then every hour spent asking for more is an hour spent on the wrong side of the problem. Not wasted. Exactly. Misallocated. Take a breath here. Let your jaw unclench, because it has been clenched since I started this section. Some of what I just said may have landed as an accusation against your own past. It is not. There is not a single person listening to this who could have known. Nobody teaches this. Nobody sat you down at 17 and explained that the instrument you would need for the most important part of your life was being quietly recalibrated in the name of your education. You were not careless with something precious. You were never told it was there. And now we arrive at the question that this entire message has been walking toward. And I want you to notice that it is a completely different question from the one you started with. You came in asking why God has been quiet. You are leaving that question behind. The new one is this. If the receiver narrowed under a long, gradual, entirely ordinary pressure, can it widen again? And if it can, does it require another 20 years to undo, or does it move faster than that? The answer to the first part is yes, and it is not in dispute anywhere. The instrument was never removed. Nothing was amputated. It was down-regulated by disuse and by explicit training. And down-regulation is not destruction. The answer to the second part is the one that surprises people, and we are going to come to it, but not yet. Because before you can widen anything, you have to know what you are going to do with the width. And that is tomorrow morning. That is the window. That is the part I promised you at the beginning and have not delivered yet. So let us go there now. There is a window tomorrow morning, and it is shorter than you think. It opens the moment you become aware that you are awake, not when your alarm goes off. Before that, in most cases, there is a stretch of time, usually somewhere between 4 and 12 minutes, in which you are conscious and the day has not yet been assembled. You know this window. You have been inside it thousands of times. It is the state where you are aware of the room, aware of the light, aware of your own weight in the bed, and not yet aware of what day it is or what you owe anyone. That window is not spiritual because mornings are holy. It is available because of what has not happened yet. 3 things have not happened yet in that window, and each of them is one of the walls that closes it. The first is language. You have not spoken and you have not read. The naming half of your mind has not been switched on into active mode. Everything in you is still running in pattern and image, which is precisely the state we spent the last section describing. You wake up for a few minutes every single day in the receiver state you have been trying to pray your way back into for years. The second is agenda. You have not yet remembered the list. The moment you recall what is required of you today, your attention orients toward tasks and threats, and orientation toward threat is the fastest known way to shut down wide reception. You cannot scan for danger and receive at the same time. The instrument does not do both. The third is input. Nothing has entered you yet. No screen, no voice, no news, no message from anyone. Your inner room is empty, and an empty room is the only room in which you can notice that something has been placed in it. Now think about what almost everyone does with those 4 to 12 minutes. The phone, within seconds, usually before the feet touch the floor, and in one movement, all 3 walls come down at once. Language arrives, agenda arrives, and several hundred pieces of other people's input arrive, and the window is not narrowed, it is gone, completely, and it does not reopen for the rest of the day except by accident. I am not going to moralize about that. It is not a discipline failure, and it is not a modern vice. The phone is simply the most efficient window-closing device ever built, and nobody told you what it was closing. So here is the first practical instruction, and it is the only one that has a cost attached. Tomorrow morning, do not reach for it. Not for an hour, not for 30 minutes, for 4 minutes. 4 minutes, that is the whole ask. If you set that boundary and hold it, you will have done something in the first 4 minutes of tomorrow that you have not done on a random weekday in years. And I want to tell you honestly what will happen, because it will not feel profound. It will feel like nothing. It will feel slightly boring. There may be a mild restlessness, a sense that you are wasting time, an urge to check something. That is not a sign it is not working. That is the sound of an instrument that has not been idle in a long time, discovering it does not know what to do with silence. Stay in it anyway, and while you are in it, do not pray in the way you normally pray. I want to be careful here because I am not telling you not to pray. I am telling you that the kind of prayer most of us default to is composed of language, and it is composed of requests, and both of those switch on the exact half of the instrument that closes the window. Instead, do this. Ask one question and then stop talking. The question is not, what should I do with my life? That is too large for the window, and it will produce nothing. The question is smaller, and it is specific to this exact window. What is the one thing? That is it. 4 words, and then silence, and then wait. And the waiting is the part almost nobody does, because 4 minutes of internal silence after a question feels like an eternity, and feels like failure the entire time. Now let me tell you what to expect, so that you recognize it when it happens, instead of dismissing it as you have dismissed it before. It will not be a voice. In almost every case, it is not a voice, and the widespread expectation of a voice has probably cost more assignments than any other single misunderstanding. It will be one of 3 things: a picture, usually of a person or a place, arriving with no story attached; a sentence, short, in your own inner voice, often something you feel like you already knew; or a physical pull, a directional sense towards something, with no words at all. And whichever of the 3 arrives, it will be accompanied by one specific quality that is the identifying mark. It will feel obvious. There will be no sense of revelation. There will be a faint sense of, oh, that, as though you are being reminded of something rather than told something. That flatness is the signature. Revelations that feel like revelations are usually your own imagination performing. The real thing arrives with the emotional temperature of remembering where you left your keys. And now the most important 60 seconds of the entire day, which is what happens immediately after. Write it down. Physically, on paper if you have it, in a note if you do not, but within 60 seconds and before you speak to anyone. Not because you might forget the content. You will not forget the content. You will forget that it happened. That is the actual failure mode, and I want you to understand it precisely because it is the reason the previous 3 dissolved. Within about 20 minutes of the window closing, the naming half of your mind comes fully online, and it does what it was trained to do. It reviews what it received while it was offline, and it evaluates it by its own standards. And by its own standards, a picture of a person with no story attached is not information. So it discards it. Not maliciously, efficiently. It is doing exactly what 12 years of schooling taught it to do, with unsupported material. Writing it down defeats that entirely, because the written note is not a memory. It is an object, and your naming mind cannot discard an object. Then do one more thing, and this is the piece that turns a nice morning practice into an actual life change. Attach an hour to it. Before you get out of bed, decide when today the action happens. Not today, generally. A time. An instruction with no hour attached becomes an intention, and intentions have a documented and dismal survival rate. An instruction with an hour attached becomes an appointment, and you keep appointments because you have been keeping appointments for other people your entire life. And then tell no one for the first day. This one surprises people, but telling someone discharges the pressure. You get the small social reward of having declared it, your system registers something as having happened, and the actual movement quietly becomes unnecessary. Do the thing first, tell people after, if at all. If something in you is already planning to do this tomorrow, put the word morning in the comments, just that. Now let me show you what a year of this looks like, because I want you to be able to see it before you decide whether it is worth 4 minutes. Picture yourself 12 months out. You have caught, let us be conservative, 150 of these. Most were tiny. A message sent, a question asked, a thing returned. A conversation started 10 minutes earlier than you would have started it. Roughly 20 of them will have produced something visible. 3 or 4 will have produced something you would call significant. And one of them, and you will not know which one, until much later, will turn out to have been the hinge of the entire decade. But that is not the part I want you to look at. Look at the person standing in that year instead. She wakes and she is not braced. He goes through a day, and the low hum of owing something is gone, because nothing is outstanding, because everything that arrives gets handled within the day. There is no backlog, and a person with no backlog has an entirely different relationship with the future than a person carrying 9 years of undelivered instructions. That is not prosperity. That is not even success. That is the thing underneath both of them, which is the experience of being someone whose inside and outside agree. Before we go on, there is a second half to the window that almost nobody uses, and it doubles what you get out of this. The morning window opens because 3 things have not happened yet: language, agenda, input. But there is another point in the day where all 3 of those temporarily drop out again, and it is the last few minutes before you fall asleep. That window is worse for receiving instructions and far better for something else. It is where the day gets filed. Right now, most nights, you file the day the way an anxious clerk files. You go through what went wrong, what you should have said, what is coming tomorrow that you are not ready for. Your last conscious minutes are spent scanning for threat, and your system takes that scan as the summary of the day and processes it for 8 hours. Change what gets filed, and you change what the morning receives. So here is the second instruction, and it takes about 90 seconds. Before you sleep, find one thing that arrived today and one thing you did, not achievements, arrivals, something that occurred to you, something you noticed, something that surfaced, and one action, however small, that you took because of something you felt, rather than because someone required it. Some nights there will not be an action, and you will write only the arrival, and that is fine, and that is still a day filed correctly. Why this matters more than it sounds like it does. Your sense of who you are is not built from your beliefs about yourself. It is built from evidence, and the evidence is whatever your mind reviews most often. Right now, the review is running on failure, nightly, for years, unsupervised. 90 seconds of a different review, done consistently, does something to your self-estimate that no amount of affirmation will do, because affirmation is a claim, and this is a record, and a person who has a record of catching things becomes, without deciding to, a person who catches things. Now let me deal with the daytime, because that is where most of this gets lost. An instruction caught in the morning has to survive about 9 hours before it gets executed, and there are 4 specific things that kill it. I want to name all 4, because you will encounter at least 2 of them tomorrow. The first is explanation. At some point in the day, you will begin constructing the reason, why this makes sense, how it fits, what the outcome might be. And the moment you start building the case, You have handed the item to the half of your mind that did not receive it, and that half has never approved anything it did not generate. It will find a flaw. It always finds a flaw. It is very good at its job. Do not explain the item to yourself. It does not need to make sense. It needs to be done. The second is upgrading. This one is subtle, and it destroys more assignments than outright refusal. You will look at the small thing and you will think, I could do this properly. Instead of a phone call, a visit. Instead of a message, a letter. Instead of 11 minutes, a plan. And upgrading feels like devotion. It feels like taking it seriously. It is, in almost every case, a delay mechanism wearing the clothes of excellence. And the upgraded version has a very low completion rate because it is now large enough to require a good day. And good days are scarce. Do the small version. The small version is the assignment. The upgraded version is your idea. The third is consultation. You will want to ask someone, usually someone sensible whose opinion you respect, and they will ask you a reasonable question that you cannot answer, because the item did not arrive with reasons, and their reasonable question will land on you as evidence that you are being foolish. They are not trying to stop you. They are doing what a caring person does with an unsupported claim. Consultation is appropriate for large, costly, irreversible decisions. It is corrosive for 11-minute errands, and you have been applying the process for the first to the second your entire adult life. The fourth is postponement to a better version of yourself. Tomorrow, when I have slept properly. Next week, when this is over. After the meeting, when I am in a better place emotionally. That person does not arrive, not because you are undisciplined, but because the conditions you are waiting for are the conditions you have been waiting for since 2017. Explanation, upgrading, consultation, postponement. 4 ways an item dies between the morning and the evening, and every one of them looks like maturity while it is happening. The counter to all 4 is the hour. That is why I told you to attach a time before your feet touch the floor. An hour makes the item an appointment, and appointments are immune to all 4, because you do not renegotiate appointments with yourself. You simply keep them, or you do not, and the keeping is a much simpler operation than the deliberating. And one more thing about the hour. Make it early. Not because early is virtuous, because your available willingness declines through the day at a rate that surprises people, and the version of you at 4 in the afternoon is not the version who received the item at 6 in the morning, and the afternoon version has a lower tolerance for the flinch. If the hour can be before noon, make it before noon. If it cannot, make it the first thing after work, rather than the last thing of the evening. Protect the item from the tired version of you. That is most of the practical skill in this. Now I want to stop and answer the 4 objections that are sitting in this room, because if I leave them unanswered, they will quietly undo everything in the next hour. The first one sounds like this. This is just psychology with religious language on top of it. You are describing attention and habit and calling it God. I want to take that seriously rather than dismiss it, because the person thinking it is usually the most honest person listening. Here is my answer. Every genuine encounter between the eternal and a human being has to arrive through a human instrument. There is no other route. When something reached Elijah, it reached him through his ears and his nerves and his exhausted body under a tree. When something reached Peter on a rooftop, it arrived while he was hungry and half asleep, and it arrived as an image, because that is what the instrument produces in that state. Describing the instrument does not explain away what comes through it. A radio has a mechanism. That fact has never once made a broadcast into an illusion. If anything, the mechanism should settle you rather than unsettle you. A God who works through the way you were actually built is more believable than one who requires you to bypass it. The second objection is heavier, and it comes from a specific kind of person. It sounds like this. I have tried everything. I have done the practices, the retreats, the disciplines, the programs. I am not new here, and every one of them worked for about 11 days. I believe you, and I want to tell you why they stopped at 11 days. Because it was not your commitment. Almost every practice you have tried was a content practice. It gave you something to think about, something to say, something to read, something to feel. Content practices are wonderful, and they are also the reason for the 11-day pattern, because content produces a lift. The lift fades, and when it fades, there is nothing underneath it, and you conclude that you failed again. What we have been describing is not content, it is a condition change. 4 minutes of not closing a window is not something you do, it is something you stop doing. And the reason that matters is that stopping something has no enthusiasm requirement. You do not need to feel inspired to not pick up a phone. Practices that require enthusiasm die when enthusiasm dies, which is on day 11, always. The third objection is the quietest and the most common, and almost nobody says it out loud. It goes like this: that is lovely, and it will work for other people, and my situation is genuinely different. And then a list follows. My health, my marriage, my age, what happened to me, how far behind I am, how much of it is already unrecoverable. I am not going to tell you your situation is not hard. I do not know your situation, and I would be lying. What I will tell you is this: every single thing described in this message has been true in far worse conditions than yours. Instructions have been received in cells, in hospital beds, in famine, in captivity, by people with nothing left, and no options, and no reasonable grounds for hope. The receiver does not require good circumstances. It requires an unclosed window, and a window can be left open in any conditions whatsoever, including the ones you are in right now. Your situation may well limit what the assignment can be. It has never limited whether one arrives. And the fourth objection is the one that has to be handled most gently, because it is not an argument, it is a wound. It says, I disqualified myself. There is something you did, or something you allowed, or a season you went through, and somewhere in it you crossed a line in your own accounting, and since then, everything spiritual you have engaged with has had a small footnote attached to it that says, but not for me. You have prayed with that footnote, you have worshipped with it. You have sat through messages like this one, with it running the whole time. Let me say something directly to that. The assignment system does not run on merit. If it did, the record we have inherited would look completely different. The man who wrote most of the songs we still sing arranged a killing to hide an affair. The man who led a nation out of slavery had already committed a murder and fled. The man who ended up with the keys denied he even knew his friend 3 times, out loud, in public, on the worst night of that friend's life. Not one of those was disqualified. Every one of them was reassigned afterward, and the assignment that came after was larger than the one before. That is not a loophole, and it is not permission to be careless. It is a description of how this has always operated. Disqualification is a human instinct. It is not a divine procedure. And there is one more thing about your particular footnote that I want you to look at. Notice that it has not stopped you from caring. 9 years into believing you were disqualified, you are still here, still listening, still hoping, still checking. A person who was actually cut off does not do that. Cut off, people lose interest. That is what being cut off feels like from the inside, and it is nothing at all like what you have been feeling. The ache is the evidence. You have been reading it as the wound, and it has been the pulse. Now, since we have cleared that, I want to do something with you that most people have never done, and it is going to take about 3 minutes, and it is going to change your estimate of your own position considerably. I want you to take inventory, not of what is missing, of what is already finished. Because there is a belief running underneath most of the discouragement I encounter, and it is a belief about position. It says, I am at the beginning. I have not started. Everything is still ahead of me, and I am too tired for everything to still be ahead of me. That belief is almost never accurate, and here is how you check it. Everything you would need in order to carry out whatever your assignment turns out to be falls into 4 categories. Capacity, meaning what you can actually do. Character, meaning what you can be trusted with. Contact, meaning who you already know. And comprehension, meaning what you understand from the inside because you lived it. Go through those 4 right now, honestly. Capacity. Count the things you can do competently that you could not do 15 years ago. Not the impressive ones. Include the unglamorous ones. Handling a crisis without falling apart. Managing money under pressure. Being in a room with someone difficult and not escalating it. Doing hard things when nobody is watching. Most people, doing this honestly, find between 8 and 20 items. Character. This is the one you will undercount, because you know your own interior and you grade yourself on the thoughts rather than the actions. So grade on actions only. Times you kept a confidence. Times you told the truth at a cost. Times you did not retaliate when retaliating was available and justified. Times you kept a commitment after the feeling that produced it had gone. Contact. Every person you already know. Not networks, not strategy. Just the fact that there are people in your phone who would take your call, and that 8 or 9 of them are in places you did not put them. Comprehension. This is the largest and the least valued. Everything you understand about suffering, about addiction, about grief, about a certain kind of family, about a certain kind of failure, that you understand from the inside because it happened to you. There is no other way to acquire it. It cannot be studied, and it is the single most valuable material a person can carry into any assignment involving other human beings. Add those 4 columns up and look at the total. You are not at the beginning. You have never been at the beginning. You are somewhere far down a road you did not know you were on, holding almost everything the next part requires, waiting for a starting gun that already fired. That is what I want to name now, the assignment ledger. Everything you have lived has been posted to it, not the highlights, all of it, including and especially the parts you would remove if you could. The failures posted as comprehension, the betrayals posted as discernment, the years of being unseen posted as the exact character that can now be trusted with something that will not applaud you for a long time. You have been reading your life as a record of what went wrong. It has been a ledger of what was acquired. And there is a dimension to that ledger that goes further back than your own life. And I want to open it now because it changes the weight of tomorrow morning considerably. You did not begin at your birth. You began somewhere behind it. Think about the things you carry that you did not choose and were never taught. A temperament, a tolerance for a particular kind of hardship, a weakness that showed up in you the same way it showed up in your father and in his mother before him. A gift that skipped a generation and landed on you with no explanation. Some of what you are carrying is not yours. It was handed to you the way a debt is handed to an heir, quietly, without a ceremony, and you have been paying on it since you were young enough to think it was simply who you are. And here is the part that matters. An assignment given to a person who stands in that position is never only about that person. There are patterns in families that run for 4 and 5 generations and then stop. And when you look at where they stopped, you almost always find one person who did something small and difficult that nobody else in the line had been willing to do. They told the truth about something. They went first. They stopped drinking. They broke the silence. They forgave someone who never asked. They stayed when everyone before them had left. None of them were famous. Most of them were not even thanked. And the entire downstream shape of a family changed on an afternoon that looked like nothing while it was happening. That is what a small door assignment often is. It looks like a personal errand. It is a hinge in a line. So picture something with me for a moment, and let it be specific rather than general. Picture a person 25 years from now whom you may or may not ever meet. Someone in your family or someone downstream of something you started. And picture them living without the particular weight you have been carrying. Not because they were stronger than you, because it was set down before they arrived, by you, on an ordinary morning, in an action so small that you doubted it the entire time you were doing it. They will never know. That is the honest part. There will be no moment where they understand what you did or trace their freedom back to your Tuesday. That is not a tragedy. That is simply the shape of this kind of work. The people who benefit most from a broken cycle are the people who never knew the cycle existed, and you have to decide whether that is enough for you. Most people who do this decide that it is. Now let me bring something back that I mentioned near the beginning, and then deliberately left alone. I told you earlier there was a resource I would return to when it was time, built around the condition of the receiver rather than the content of the message. I want to close that loop partway now, because we have just spent a long stretch establishing exactly the problem it addresses, and leaving it hanging any longer would be a strange thing to do to you. Everything we described about synchronization, about the two halves running as one instrument, about why the 4-year-old knew things and the adult cannot, has been studied, not by mystics. In laboratories, with instruments, by people who were not looking for anything spiritual at all, and found something that has enormous spiritual consequence. I am going to give you that in full shortly, including where it came from and what it means for what happens tomorrow morning, but not in the middle of this. It deserves its own space, and you deserve to hear it without it being squeezed between two other things. So hold it, and let me finish what we are in the middle of, because there is one more part of the ledger that has to be said, and it is the hardest one. The seasons you would delete. Everyone has 2 or 3, not the ordinary difficulties, the ones you do not discuss, the stretch where you were not who you want to be remembered as, the relationship you should have left much earlier and did not, the years lost to something, the period where your faith was not brave and quiet, it was simply absent, and you went through the motions in front of people who thought you were fine. Those are on the ledger too, and I want to be careful about how I say this, because there is a cheap version of it that does real damage. The cheap version says everything happens for a reason and your suffering was a gift. That is not true, and I will not say it to you. Some of what happened to you should not have happened. Some of it was somebody else's sin landing on your life. Some of it was your own choice, and it cost people who did not deserve to pay. None of that gets converted into a blessing by being reframed nicely. Here is the true version instead, and it is smaller and much more durable. Nothing that happened to you is wasted material. That is a different claim from saying it was good. Wasted is the opposite of usable, and every one of those seasons produced something usable, whether or not it should ever have occurred. You know what it is like in there? That knowledge cannot be acquired any other way, and it is exactly the knowledge that lets you sit across from someone in that same place without flinching, without performing, without needing them to be better quickly, so that you can feel useful. The world is full of people who want to help and have never been anywhere. They are kind, and they are useless in a crisis through no fault of their own. You have been somewhere. That is not redemption of what happened. It is inventory. And most assignments, when they finally become clear, turn out to be pointed directly at the thing you would most like to forget. That is not cruelty, it is efficiency. You are the one with the map of that country. Of course, the errand is in that country, which is why, when the item arrives tomorrow morning, there is a decent chance it will point somewhere you have been avoiding, and there is a decent chance your first response will be to conclude that it cannot be from God, because God would not send you back there. He sends people back there constantly, almost exclusively in fact. The pattern is so consistent that if what arrives tomorrow points at your worst material, you should treat that as confirmation rather than as an objection. Now, take a breath, because we are about to turn a corner. Everything up to this point has been about what happened and why, the shape of the task, the 5 drawers, the 4 times, what narrowed and how it narrowed, the window and what to do inside it, the ledger and what is already in your hands. That is the diagnosis, and it is complete. There is nothing important left to add to it. What is left is the other half, and it is the half most messages never reach, because diagnosis feels like resolution, and people stop there satisfied. I do not want you satisfied. I want you moving tomorrow. So the question in front of us now is the mechanical one, and it is the last real question of this message. Not what is the task. You will have that by 9 in the morning. Not why did you miss it. You have that already. The question is whether the instrument you will be listening with tomorrow is the narrow one you have had for 30 years, or something wider than that. Because the same window, entered with 2 different receivers, produces 2 very different mornings. And that is the thing I have not answered yet. Why does knowing all of this still not produce movement? You have understood things before. You have had clarity before. You have walked away from something with your whole chest full of it and been exactly the same person by Thursday. Understanding is not the missing piece, and if it were, you would have arrived years ago. The answer is not in your mind. It is somewhere you have not looked yet, and it is closer to the floor than you expect. Let me put all of this in the plainest language I have, with no imagery at all, because there is a version of this you should be able to repeat to another person in under a minute. And if you cannot repeat it, you do not have it. Here is why. Your ability to receive clear inner direction depends on two halves of your mind operating at the same time, rather than one interrupting the other. That capacity was at its peak when you were a small child. It declined gradually across your education and your working life, not because anything went wrong spiritually, but because the environment consistently rewarded one half and dismissed the other. What remains is a working signal arriving through a narrowed channel, which is why guidance reaches you as a 2-second pull instead of a full instruction. Here is what. There is a window every morning before language and agenda and input come online, in which the narrowing temporarily lifts. In that window, a real item can be received. Written down within 60 seconds and given an hour, it becomes an action. Not written down, it is discarded within 20 minutes by the part of you trained to discard it. And here is who. This is for a person who has been sincere for a very long time and has been getting almost nothing back, and who has been told the problem is their faith when the problem was never their faith. That is the whole thing. 3 paragraphs. Nothing in this message is more complicated than that. You now know exactly what has been happening to you. The only question left is what you do with a receiver that has been running below its capacity for 30 years. So let me finally tell you what I found and where it came from, because I promised you twice, and I do not want to leave it hanging any longer. In 1981, the Nobel Prize in Medicine went to a researcher named Roger Sperry, and it did not go to him for anything spiritual. It went to him for work on what happens when the two halves of the brain are separated from each other, and what that separation revealed about how they normally cooperate. What came out of that work, and out of 40 years of research that followed it, is the finding underneath everything I have described to you in this message. The two hemispheres were built to operate in a synchronized state. When they do, a person has access to pattern and language at once, image and structure at once, knowing and explaining at once. When they do not, a person still functions. They simply function on one channel, and everything that requires both arrives incomplete. That synchronized condition is not rare in children. By the measures used, something close to 98% of young children operate in it. Among adults, fewer than 1 in 1,000 still do. Read those two numbers next to each other again. 98% of us had it. Fewer than 1 in 1,000 of us kept it. That is not a story about a few gifted people. That is a story about a nearly universal loss that nobody grieves because nobody notices. And it reframes the last 30 years of your inner life in a single stroke. What you have been calling spiritual dryness has a physiological component that no one ever mentioned to you, not instead of the spiritual dimension. Underneath it, in the instrument through which the spiritual dimension has to arrive. A neurologist in New York named Daniel Barone spent years working on the practical end of that question, not the theory, which was already settled, the reversal, whether the synchronized state could be restored in an adult, and how quickly and by what means. The conventional answers were all impractical. Clinical neurofeedback in a lab runs around $300 an hour. A home machine runs about $7,000. There are breathing protocols that require 20 demanding minutes a day, and most people abandon them inside 2 weeks. Meditation works, genuinely, and it works on a timescale of months to years, which is fine if you have months to years. What his team built instead was an 8-minute audio sequence. You put headphones on, you close your eyes, and you listen. There is nothing to do. No mantra, no visualization, no technique to learn, no way to do it wrong. The sequence works below the level of your attention, which is precisely the point, because attention is the half of the instrument that has been doing the interrupting. Before I tell you what it is called, I want to tell you about two people, because the numbers and the mechanism matter far less than what it actually looks like inside somebody ordinary. There was a woman in California who described her life before as a series of things that happened to her. That was her phrase. Not depression exactly. A sense of being downstream of everything, always reacting, never the one who moved first. She started using it in the mornings. She said the change she noticed first was not clarity or focus. It was that she started knowing what she wanted before somebody asked her. And there was a man in Texas who had been in the same role for 11 years and had watched 3 people younger than him move past him and had privately concluded he was simply not the kind of person things opened up for. He described the shift as the ability to hold a whole problem in his head at once instead of one piece at a time. Within a few months, he had done something he had been circling for years and had never been able to begin. Neither of those is a miracle story, and I am not offering them as one. They are descriptions of an instrument coming back online in an ordinary life. They call it the genius switch. The name is unfortunate, honestly, because it sounds like it is about intelligence, and it is not. Your intelligence was never the issue. What it addresses is synchronization, which is the thing that determines whether what you already have can operate as one piece. More than 18,000 people have used it at this point, which is not a large number in commercial terms, and is a very large number in terms of how much has been documented about what it does. Here is what it actually does, described as plainly as I can manage. It does not add anything to you. It restores a timing relationship between two things that are already there and have fallen out of step. The sequence is built to bring both halves into the same rhythm and hold them there long enough for the state to stabilize. And then you take the headphones off and go about your morning with the instrument running as one piece instead of two. I want to be precise about what it is not, because there is a great deal of noise in this area, and you have probably already been through some of it. It is not a sound wave product. It is not the kind of track people have been listening to for years hoping something would happen. Those work on a completely different premise, and a great many people have tried them and felt nothing. And if you are one of those people, I want you to know that your conclusion was reasonable and your experience was not a failure of faith or attention. This works on synchronization between the halves rather than on the state of either half by itself. That is a different mechanism entirely, and it is why it produces something in people for whom nothing else did. 8 minutes, once a day, headphones and closed eyes. If you miss a day, nothing is lost, and you simply pick it up again. You do not have to believe in it for it to operate, which I consider a point in its favor, because anything that requires your belief in order to work is measuring your belief and not itself. And now I want to say the thing that matters more than the mechanism. The genius switch is not for everyone. It is not for someone who wants to feel spiritual for an afternoon. It is not for someone looking for a lift. There is no experience attached to it. Nothing happens while you listen. It is boring, and it is supposed to be, and people who need their practices to feel like something will quit in 4 days. It is for the person this entire message has been describing. Someone who has been sincere for decades and has been receiving in a narrow band and has finally understood, possibly in the last hour, that the problem was never the sender. Someone who is going to stand in a window tomorrow morning and would like to be standing there with the full instrument rather than half of it. If that is not you, close this and take the rest of what I have given you, which is yours regardless and costs nothing. For those who want it, here is where it stands. Colleagues who reviewed it told his team it would be reasonable at $500, and given what the clinical alternatives cost, that was not flattery. $300 an hour in a facility, $7,000 for the equipment to do something comparable at home. It was not released at $500. It was not released at $200 or at $100. It went out at $49, and on the page where his team made it available, there is a further reduction that brings it to $39. That is the entire cost. One time, permanent access, no subscription. 4 other things come with it at that price. A guided visualization built by someone whose work sits at the top of one of the most widely used calm and sleep apps in the world. A practical guide to the ordinary supermarket foods that contribute most to mental fog, with substitutions that also reduce a grocery bill by a meaningful amount each month. A manifestation text more than 100 years old that most of the modern material on the subject quietly descends from, and a printable summary of 5 habits that hold the state in place between sessions. And it is covered by an unconditional money-back guarantee. Listen to it once, listen to it 80 times. If it does not do for you what it has done for those 18,000 people, every dollar comes back, without conditions and without a conversation about how much of it you used. I want to say something about urgency, because you have been sold urgency your whole life and you can smell it coming. I am not going to tell you the link is disappearing. It is not. What I will tell you is different, and it is true. The provision that has already been arranged around your life becomes visible in the synchronized state in a way that it simply does not in the partial state. Not because anything new is being sent, because the receiver that can recognize what is already in the room comes back online. What has been arranged for you is in motion, whether or not you are ready for it. The only real question is whether you arrive at the meeting point with the instrument working. Every week that the synchronization stays disrupted is another week that what is being offered to you moves through a receiver operating below its designed capacity. Not because the offer is withdrawn, because the depth of reception determines the depth of the arrival. One more practical thing worth naming directly. If you go looking for something with a similar sounding name in the ordinary places people look for audio, you will find tracks. His team examined a number of them. Most had nothing embedded in them at all. The name is easy to put on something. The mechanism is not, and the mechanism is the entire difference. The direct page is the only verified source, and that is where the link below points. If your spirit resonates with what has been described here, that link is in the description below and in the pinned comment. Everything is laid out on their page, and you can read all of it before deciding anything at all. And now, I want to close that off cleanly, because there is something I do not want to leave ambiguous. The tool does not replace God. It does not replace obedience. It will not walk into the room for you. It will not make the call for you, and it will not decide anything on your behalf. What God is doing in you is not conditional on any tool, and it never has been. But a tool that restores the receiver gives what God is doing more of what it was designed to land in. That is all it is. That is all it claims. And the deeper current of this message is where we return now. Because there is something left that is more important than any of that, and it concerns what happens after tomorrow morning. Let us say the window works. Let us say you hold the 4 minutes. You ask the 4 words. You wait through the boredom, and something arrives. A face, or a sentence, or a pull. You write it down inside 60 seconds, and you attach an hour to it and you tell nobody. And then you do it. Whatever it is, it takes 40 minutes, and it is slightly embarrassing, and it is over by lunch. What happens next is the part nobody prepares people for, and it is where most of this collapses. Nothing happens. That is what happens next. You do the thing, and there is no confirmation, no sign, no sense of having pleased anyone. The phone call goes fine and ends. The message is read and not answered for 2 days. The apology is accepted politely, and the relationship does not transform. And by that evening, there is a flatness in you that feels almost like betrayal, and a thought arrives that sounds reasonable and is the most dangerous thought in this entire process. That was probably nothing. I need you to be ready for that thought, because it is going to come, and it is going to come with excellent timing and considerable persuasive force. And if you accept it once, you will not do the next morning. And if you do not do the next morning, you are back where you started within 11 days. So let me explain why nothing happening is the expected result and not the disappointing one. An assignment is not a transaction. You did not do a thing in order to receive a thing. What you did was clear one item off a line that has been holding items for years. The value of that is not in the item. It is in the line. Think about what actually changed. Yesterday you were a person who feels things and does not act on them. Today you are a person who felt something and acted on it inside a day. That is not a small change in your circumstances. That is a change in the category of person you are. And it happened in one afternoon, and it happened whether or not anyone noticed. The results of clearing a line are not visible on the day you clear it. They are visible in what starts arriving afterward, and what arrives afterward needs the line clear in order to arrive at all. Now I want to name the second thing that will happen, because it catches people even harder than the flatness. There will be resistance, not dramatic resistance, ordinary, boring, extremely well-timed resistance. The morning after the first successful window, something will interfere. A child will wake early. You will sleep through. There will be a message that must be answered before anything else. You will feel unwell. Something will have gone wrong overnight that requires immediate attention, and it will all be completely mundane and completely explicable, and there will be no reason at all to read it as anything other than life. I am not going to tell you to see an enemy behind your alarm clock. That kind of thinking makes people fragile and paranoid, and I have no interest in producing either. But I will tell you this. Whatever it is that has benefited from you operating at half capacity for 30 years has not been sitting idle. It did not need to do anything dramatic because the arrangement was stable. A person who cannot read their instructions requires no management at all. You are about to become unstable in that arrangement, and the response to that is never dramatic either. It is friction. It is the accumulation of small, reasonable, unrelated obstacles at exactly the hour you had planned to be still. So, decide now, tonight, what you will do on the morning it goes wrong, because deciding in the moment always fails. Here is what I suggest. If the window is broken, take 90 seconds somewhere else in the day. In the car before you go in the bathroom at work, standing in the kitchen with the light off after everyone else is asleep. It is a weaker window, and it still works, and a weak window used is worth more than a strong window missed. The principle is not the morning. The principle is that the line gets cleared daily. The morning is simply the easiest place to do it. Now let me tell you about the third thing, which is the one almost nobody warns you about, and which does the most damage. Somewhere between the 5th and the 15th of these, one of them is going to be big. Not big in scale, big in cost. Something arrives that is still small and still completable and still something you know how to do, and it is going to require you to give something up or say something that changes a relationship permanently or close a door you have been keeping open as insurance. And when that one comes, everything you have built will be tested in about 4 seconds, and you will suddenly discover that you have been quietly assuming this whole process would be pleasant. It is not going to be pleasant. It is going to be right, which is a different feeling entirely and much less comfortable. I want to be honest with you rather than encouraging, because encouragement at this point would be a kind of dishonesty. The path we have been describing will cost you things. It will cost you a certain kind of peace that is actually just avoidance. It will cost you some relationships that were built on you staying smaller than you are. It will cost you the very useful excuse of not knowing what you are supposed to do, which has protected you from failure for a long time. That last one is the real price, and nobody names it. Right now, in your current condition, you cannot fail at your assignment because you do not know what it is. That is a genuinely comfortable position, and part of you is aware of it. The moment you can read clearly, that protection is gone. You will know, and knowing means you can refuse, and refusing means something. There is a reason a narrow channel is easier to live with than a wide one. So I am not going to promise you that this makes life easier. It does not. It makes life accurate, and accurate is harder and better, and there is no version where it is both easy and real. What I will promise you is the removal of one specific weight, and it may be the weight you most want gone. The low, constant, unnameable sense that you are behind, that there is something you should be doing, that somewhere there is a version of your life running properly, and you are not in it. That goes, not because you achieve anything, because there stops being a gap between what arrives and what you do. and that gap is the entire source of the feeling. You have been carrying the weight of undelivered mail. Deliver it daily, and the weight is simply not there anymore, and you will notice its absence about 3 weeks in an ordinary moment, and you will not be able to explain to anyone why you feel lighter. And I want to give you one more thing to hold, because there is a question sitting under all of this that we have not touched, and it is the one that actually determines whether any of this lasts. Why you? Not in the way that question usually gets asked, which is a complaint dressed as a question. I mean it seriously. Out of everyone, why is this arriving to you in this season, with this specificity, after this many years of quiet? The answer is not that you are special in a way other people are not. That framing has done a great deal of damage in this space, and I will not add to it. The answer is far more ordinary and far more demanding. It is arriving to you because you are still here. That is the entire criterion, and it sounds like nothing until you look at what it actually took. Somewhere along the way, most people stop. Not dramatically. They do not renounce anything. They simply stop expecting, and the stopping is so gradual that they would deny it if you asked them. They still attend. They still believe in a general way. But the part of them that used to lean forward has quietly folded itself up and gone to sleep. And it will not be woken by a message like this one, because it is not listening to messages like this one anymore. You are listening. 67 minutes into something that has asked a great deal of you and offered no entertainment whatsoever, you are still here. Do you understand how unusual that is? Not admirable, unusual. Most of the people who started this are gone, and they are not bad people, and they were not less sincere than you an hour ago. Something in you did not fold. Through 9 years of silence, or 19, through the thing that happened, through the season you would delete, through every reasonable opportunity to conclude that this was all a story people tell themselves, something in you kept the light on in a room nobody was visiting. That is the qualification. Not your gifts, not your character, not your record. Durability. The refusal to stop expecting after the expectation stopped being rewarded. And durability is the only qualification that cannot be faked, cannot be acquired quickly, and cannot be transferred from one person to another. It has to be built, and it can only be built the way yours was built, which is by lasting through exactly the kind of years you have lasted through. So, when you ask why you, the honest answer is that there are not many left standing in your position, and the ones who are standing there did not get there by being fortunate. Now let me show you the shape of what opens on the other side of this, and I want to do it in 3 pictures rather than in principles, because principles do not move anyone. The first picture is your ordinary week. It is a Wednesday, 8 or 9 months from now. Nothing special is happening. And what has changed is that you are no longer negotiating with yourself. There is no internal committee anymore. Something occurs to you at 11 in the morning, and by 12:30 it is handled, and the whole exhausting apparatus of deliberation that used to sit between impulse and action has quietly been dismantled through disuse. You have no idea how much energy that apparatus was consuming until it is gone. It is the difference between driving with the handbrake on and driving without it. And nobody driving with the handbrake on knows that is what they are doing. The second picture is your relationships. Something happens to how people receive you when your inside and outside are pointed the same way, and it happens without you doing anything to produce it. You will notice that conversations get shorter and go deeper. You will notice that you stop explaining yourself, not out of arrogance, but because the compulsive explaining was always an attempt to close a gap that no longer exists. Some people will move closer, a few will move away, and it will be quiet, and there will be no argument, and you will grieve 1 or 2 of them, and you should. Not every departure is a promotion, and I am not going to tell you it is. But the ones who stay will be standing in a different relationship to you, and there will be at least one person, probably someone you would not predict, who tells you something they have never told anyone, because people say true things to people who are not performing. The third picture is the one I care most about, and it is the hardest to describe. It is a moment on an ordinary evening when you are doing something completely unremarkable, and you notice that the background sound is gone. The one that has been running underneath everything for as long as you can remember. The low, continuous hum that says something is unfinished, something is missed, something is waiting, you are behind. You will not notice it going. You will notice, at some random moment months later, that it is not there, and you will stop in the middle of whatever you are doing. That is the return. Not achievement, not recognition, not a changed circumstance. The end of a background sound you did not know was optional. And I want to say one more thing about that, because it connects to something we established a long way back. The hum was never anxiety. We covered this. It was an undelivered instruction registering as pressure, which means the hum is not something to be treated or managed or accepted or medicated or prayed away. It is a notification. It has always been a notification. You have spent years trying to get rid of a notification instead of opening it. Take a breath. We are close to the end now, and I want you present for it. Let your hands rest wherever they are. Let your shoulders come down. Notice the weight of your body in whatever is holding it up right now. The chair, the bed, the floor of a car, and let it be held rather than holding itself. And notice one thing while you are there. Notice that some part of you has been quietly hoping this entire time that what I have been describing is true. Not thinking it, hoping it. That hope is not naivety. You are not a person who has been fooled easily. You have had every reason available to stop hoping, and you have declined all of them. Stay with that for a second. That is the most reliable thing about you, and it is going to be the thing that carries tomorrow morning. And for anyone who felt something settle when the receiver was described earlier, that door is still open in the description below and in the pinned comment. It is a small step, and it costs very little. But small steps taken from a clear mind have redirected entire seasons of a life, and that is the only claim I will make for it. That is the last time I will mention it. The rest of what remains belongs to you and to tomorrow morning. Because there is one more thing about the 4 times, and I have been holding it back deliberately, and it is the piece that changes the meaning of everything I have told you tonight. I told you the task has come 3 times and that tomorrow is the 4th. That is true. But it is not the whole truth, and the part I have not said is the part that matters most. The task is not about you. Everything in this message until now has been framed around what you receive, what you missed, what narrowed in you, what opens for you. And all of that is true, and none of it is the center. Go back to the drawers for a moment. Go back to what actually kept surfacing. A person. Almost every time, when people do this honestly, what comes back is a person. A name in the nostalgia drawer. A face in the guilt, with no crime. Someone specific behind the daydream that has not changed in a decade. The irritation is usually about a situation, but sit with the situation for 30 seconds, and there is somebody standing in the middle of it. You have been treating that as the raw material of your assignment. It is not the material, it is the recipient. Here is what I have not said until now. Somebody has been praying, and the answer that was arranged for them has been routed through a person who could not read the instruction. I want you to sit inside that sentence, because it is not a guilt trip, and I will not let it become one. It is the opposite. It is the thing that finally explains the persistence. You have wondered why it kept coming back. Why the same face? Why for 9 years? Why it would not resolve and would not fade the way ordinary regret fades. Ordinary regret decays. This did not decay. It arrived with the same temperature every single time across a decade, which is not how memory behaves and is not how guilt behaves. It did not decay because it was live. Something on the other end was still open. And now everything reorganizes. The reason the assignment is always small is that you are the last few feet of a delivery, not the whole journey. You do not have to build anything. You have to hand something over. Small is what the last few feet look like. The reason it is always something you already know how to do is that you were selected for proximity, not for capacity. You are not the most qualified person for this. You are the one who is close enough. The reason there is a flinch in it is that handing something to a specific human being always exposes you in a way that abstract service never does. You can serve humanity without ever being seen. You cannot walk up to one person. And the reason it will feel disappointingly obvious is that from heaven's side it has been obvious the entire time, and you are being told something you have already been told, gently, 4 times. Let me say the thesis again, because it means something different now than it did an hour ago. You have not been ignoring the task. You have been unable to read it. An hour ago that sentence was a mercy about your past. Now it is something else. Now there is a second person standing inside it. That is the weight I have been carrying while telling you all of this, and I have held it until now on purpose, because you were not ready for it at minute 4, and you are ready for it now. Now I want to be extremely careful, because there is a wrong way to receive what I have just said, and the wrong way will hurt you and produce nothing. The wrong way is to conclude that you have failed someone, that because you could not read it, a person suffered who did not have to, and that this is now a debt. Hear me clearly. That is not how any of this works, and the reason is simple. Nothing that is genuinely arranged depends on a single, unreliable human being executing perfectly on the first attempt. That would be an appallingly designed system, and it is not the one we are in. The evidence is right in front of you. The instruction was reissued 4 times. A system that punished the first miss does not reissue anything. The redelivery is the proof that nothing was lost. Grace, in the practical sense we are discussing tonight, is simply the fact that the thing keeps coming back. But something has been waiting. That is true, and I am not going to soften it, because the waiting is exactly what makes tomorrow morning worth getting up for. And here is the part that will carry you through the flinch when it comes. The person on the other end is not waiting for you to be impressive. They are not waiting for a speech, or for you to have your life together, or for you to be qualified. In almost every case, they have no idea they are waiting at all. They have simply been in something for a long time, and they have prayed about it, and the prayer has been answered. And the answer is a phone call from you that lasts 11 minutes, and that you will find slightly awkward. That is the whole thing. That is what 4 times of reissued instruction has been trying to produce. And now you know why the smallness never made sense to you. You were measuring it against the size of a calling. It was never a calling. It was an errand between 2 people. And errands are small by nature, and this one happens to be the specific errand that was assigned to you out of everyone alive, because you are the one who is close enough, and the one who has been through the same country, and the one who is still standing with the light on. Everything in your ledger points at it. The comprehension you would delete, the character built in unwatched years, the contact you already have, the capacity you did not know you had counted. You have been fully equipped for a very long time for something you could not read. So let me tell you what changes about tomorrow morning now that you know this. When you ask the 4 words, do not brace for a mission, expect a person. If a face arrives, that is the answer. Do not wait for a second, clearer, more official signal that confirms it. There will not be one. The face is the whole message, and the verb is almost always the same simple verb. Go to them, call them, say the thing, return what you have been keeping, ask the question you have not asked, tell them what you saw in them that you never said out loud. And if what arrives is not a person but a place, or a piece of work, or something that seems impersonal, hold it lightly and follow it 1 step, because there is a person about 2 steps behind almost everything. There is one fear left, and it is the most reasonable one in this whole message, and I have deliberately left it until now. What if I get it wrong? What if I sit in the window, and something arrives, and I act on it, and it was not from God at all? It was my own appetite, or my loneliness, or an old wound, looking for a reason to make a phone call it has wanted to make for years. That fear has kept more sincere people paralyzed than any other single thing, and I want to handle it properly rather than reassure you past it. Start with the man who had exactly this fear and is remembered for it. Gideon was hiding in a winepress threshing wheat when he was told he was a mighty warrior, which was an absurd thing to say to a man doing farm work in a hole in the ground so that nobody would rob him. He heard it clearly, and his response was not obedience, and it was not faith. His response was to ask for proof, and then, having received it, to ask for proof again, with a specific and slightly ridiculous test involving wool and dew, and then having received that, to ask for the test to be run again in reverse to rule out coincidence. 3 verifications from a man who had already been told directly. Now notice what did not happen. He was not rebuked, not once. The tests were run, all of them, including the second one, which was explicitly designed to rule out the possibility that the first was chance. That should reorganize something in you if you have been carrying a belief that asking for confirmation is a failure of faith. It is not treated as one anywhere in the record. It is treated as reasonable behavior from a person being asked to do something significant on the basis of an internal experience. So you are allowed to test it. You are more than allowed. It is normal. Here is how, practically, because a test is only useful if it can actually distinguish. The first test is direction. A genuine instruction almost always points outward, toward a person or an action that costs you something small. Appetite points inward, toward your own comfort, vindication, or relief. Ask which direction the item points, and be honest, because you will know within 2 seconds. The second test is the flatness. We covered this, and I want you to use it as a test, rather than only as a description. Your own material arrives with charge. It is exciting, or it is urgent, or it makes you feel a particular way about yourself. The genuine item arrives flat, obvious, and slightly disappointing. If it makes you feel significant, be suspicious. If it makes you feel slightly foolish, proceed. The third test is durability. Wait the day. If it is still there at 9 in the evening, at the same temperature, unchanged by your mood, it is not appetite. Appetite fluctuates violently across a day, and the genuine item does not fluctuate at all. This is why the hour matters, and also why the hour should not be 5 minutes after waking. Give it the day. The fourth test is cost asymmetry. What happens if you are wrong? For an 11-minute errand toward one person, the downside of being wrong is that you made a slightly awkward phone call and someone was mildly puzzled. That is the entire exposure. Compare that to the downside of being wrong in the other direction, which is another 9 years. That asymmetry is the answer to the fear, and I want to make it explicit because most people never do the arithmetic. You are not choosing between certainty and risk. You are choosing between a small, cheap, recoverable mistake and an expensive, slow, uncorrectable one. And you have been treating them as though they were equally weighted, because the small mistake is visible and embarrassing and the large one is invisible and takes place over a decade. Embarrassment is loud and cheap. Omission is silent and expensive. Your instincts have been optimizing for the wrong one your entire life, and so has almost everyone else's. And that is why the world is full of people with excellent judgment and empty ledgers. And there is one more thing about getting it wrong that nobody tells you. You will get some of them wrong, not most, some. You will act on something that turns out to be your own material, and you will feel foolish for about a day, and then something surprising will happen. Your accuracy will improve, because discernment is not a gift you either have or lack. It is a comparison function, and comparison requires data, and data only comes from having acted on both kinds and noticed the difference. Every person you have ever met who reads these things well got there by getting a number of them wrong early and paying attention to what wrong felt like on the way in. You cannot develop discernment by waiting for certainty. Waiting produces no data. It produces only a longer wait and a more anxious waiter. So tomorrow morning, act on it even if you are not sure, especially if you are not sure, given that the cost of a wrong small action is one awkward conversation. The certainty you have been waiting for is not the entry requirement, it is the output. It arrives after about 40 of these, and there is no route to it that does not go through the 40. Now there are 2 hard cases, and I am not going to leave them unaddressed, because for some of you, one of them is the entire reason this feels impossible. The first hard case is that the person is gone. They died, or they moved beyond reach in a way that amounts to the same thing. And you have been carrying a name that surfaces every few weeks and there is no phone number attached to it anymore. And every time this kind of message comes along, you sit through it, aware that whatever it applies to, it does not apply to you. I want to give you something real here, rather than something comforting. When the recipient is gone, the errand does not disappear, it relocates. There is almost always a second person standing behind the first one, the child of the one who died, the sibling who was also in it, the friend who watched the whole thing and has never been able to talk about it with anyone who was there. Someone currently in the exact situation the first person was in. The material you were carrying for the first person was never only about them. It was about what you understood from being close to it, and that understanding does not expire when they do. It becomes the only usable inheritance from a loss that otherwise produced nothing. So if the name that keeps surfacing belongs to someone unreachable, do not conclude the line is dead. Ask instead who is standing in their place now. In my experience, people know within about 4 seconds, and the answer usually embarrasses them slightly because it is somebody obvious. The second hard case is harder, and I want to move slowly through it. Sometimes the name that keeps surfacing is the name of the person who hurt you, and every framework you have ever been given collapses at that point, because forgiveness language arrives, and it feels like being asked to say that what happened was acceptable, and you will not say that, and you are right not to. So let me be precise about what is being asked and what is not. You are not being asked to declare it acceptable. You are not being asked to restore access. You are not being asked to be alone in a room with someone who is not safe. Nothing in what I have described requires you to expose yourself to further harm, and any teaching that tells you it does is not describing this and should be left alone. What the instruction usually is, in these cases, is much smaller and much stranger. It is to set down the case, not the memory, not the truth about what happened. The case, the internal document you have been maintaining for years, the one you revise sometimes, the one that keeps the evidence organized in case anyone ever asks. Almost everyone who has been genuinely wronged is maintaining one, and maintaining it takes a specific and continuous amount of energy that you have stopped being able to feel because you have been paying it so long. Setting it down does not mean the case was false. It means you are no longer the one holding it. And the reason that shows up as an assignment rather than as therapy is that in almost every instance I have watched, the thing on the far side of that particular release is not peace. Exactly. It is capacity. Something comes back online that was tied up. There is a reason it keeps being handed to you, and it is not because heaven is interested in the other person getting away with something. It is because you are still paying rent on a room you no longer live in, and the rent is coming out of the account tomorrow morning needs. Take a moment with that. If it applies to you, do not rush past it. And if the answer is not tomorrow, then it is not tomorrow, and that is allowed. Some instructions take a season to become executable, and there is no schedule being enforced on you by anyone. Now let me close the largest circle in this message, because you might have noticed something by now, and if you have not, I want to point at it directly. Everything on your ledger, every single item, is somebody else's answered prayer. The comprehension you got from the worst season is for someone who is in it now. The character you built in unwatched years is what makes you safe to receive something. The contacts you did not arrange are the roots. The capacity you undercounted is the ability to actually complete the last few feet without dropping it. None of that was for your enrichment. All of it was inventory for delivery. And that is why the assignment can be small, while the life that produced the ability to carry it took 40 years to build. The errand is 11 minutes. The qualification took decades. That ratio has confused people for a very long time, and it is not confusing at all once you know which one is the product. You were not being prepared for a stage, you were being loaded, and it is worth noticing what that does to your history. The years of being overlooked kept your ego small enough that you can walk up to one person without needing it to be about you. The seasons of financial pressure taught you what it does to a person and removed your ability to be glib about it. The relationships that ended taught you what it feels like to be left, which is the only reason you would recognize it in somebody else's face across a table. Every wound is a credential in the one specific area where wounds are the only credential that works. None of that makes the wounds good. I said that earlier, and I will say it once more, so it does not get lost. Some of it should not have happened. Somebody sinned against you, and it is not redeemed by being useful. But it is not wasted. And there is an enormous difference between a life that was harmed and a life that was harmed and produced nothing, and you get to determine which of those two you have had, and you get to determine it tomorrow morning in 4 minutes in a room with no one else in it. So let us do the last thing. I am going to ask you to do something with your body, because everything we have talked about tonight has been about an instrument, and instruments are physical, and I do not want you to walk away with this only in your understanding. If you are somewhere you can do this, place your hand on your heart. If you are driving, keep both hands where they are, and simply feel the weight of your back against the seat instead. Now close your eyes if you are able to. If you are not, let them rest on one still point. Breathe once, slowly, and let the breath out longer than you took it in. I want you to picture a room. It is a small room, and it is somewhere in you, and it has been there your whole life. There is a table in the middle of it, and on the table there is a stack. Take a moment and let the stack be whatever size it actually is. Do not make me as angry about that stack. There is no one standing in the room with their arms folded. The stack has simply been waiting on a table in a room you did not know you had. Now look at the one on top. Do not search for it. Do not evaluate the options. Whatever came first when I said that, that is it. It has been on top for a long time. If it is a face, let the face be there. If it is a place, let the place be there. If it is a sentence, let yourself hear it in your own voice, which is the voice it has always used. And now I want you to notice something about it, and this is the part I want you to carry out of this room with you. It is not heavy. Pick it up and notice that it weighs almost nothing. Everything heavy about it was in the not picking it up. The item itself is light. It has always been light. It is 11 minutes and a small flinch, and you have been treating it like a mountain because it has been sitting on a table for 9 years, and things acquire imaginary weight in proportion to how long you avoid them. Hold it and say this with me, quietly, out loud if you can. I am not the one who ignored it. I am the one who could not read it, and I can read it now. Say it once more, slower, and mean the last part. I am not the one who ignored it. I am the one who could not read it, and I can read it now. Now, still holding it, feel where your hand is. Feel your palm against your chest, or your back against the seat, and feel the actual physical pressure of it, because your body is going to be the thing that remembers this tomorrow morning when your mind has moved on. Press slightly, just slightly. That pressure is the marker. Tomorrow morning, before you ask the 4 words, put your hand there again and press, and your body will bring back this room and the table and the lightness of the thing on top. And now let the room go. Open your eyes. Nothing mystical happened. You did not receive a download. What you did was locate an item you already had and correct the weight you had assigned to it, and that is the entire work. Chosen one, we are at the end, and I want to give you what is yours before we finish. Everything that was quiet in your life was not empty, it was loaded. Everything that circled and would not resolve was not a flaw in your mind, it was patience on the other end. Everything you thought you had failed to obey was never disobeyed. It was undelivered, and it is still in the room, and it is still light. Hear what is being said over you now, and let it land somewhere lower than your thinking. You are not behind. You have been holding a full ledger and reading it as an empty one. You are not disqualified. You are the last one still standing with the light on in a room nobody visits. You are not too late. Nothing that keeps being reissued for 9 years has a deadline you can miss by one morning. You are not too small for it. It is small. That was never a problem with you. That was the design of the door. And you are not alone in it, and you never were, even through the long stretch where the evidence pointed the other way, and you kept the light on anyway, with no reason to. Say this with me now. Say it as a description of what is true, and not as a request for it to become true. I am not waiting on a word. I am carrying one. I am not auditioning for an assignment. I have been holding one. I am not deaf, and I am not distant, and I am not defective. I am a receiver, and I am coming back online, and I am able to read what is placed in my hands. Now let me give you the whole thing one more time, concretely, so that you can walk away with it in your hands and not only in your feelings. Tonight, before you sleep, do two things. Put your phone somewhere that is not within reach of the bed. Not off, just out of arm's reach, because the entire failure happens in the first 3 seconds, and 3 seconds is all the distance you need to buy. Then go through the 5 drawers. Nostalgia, guilt with no crime, envy, persistent irritation, the daydream that has not changed. Give it 8 minutes and write down whatever names appear. Do not analyze them. Just get them on paper where your morning mind can find them. Tomorrow, when you become aware that you are awake, do not move and do not reach. Put your hand where you put it a few minutes ago and press slightly. That is the marker, and your body will remember. Ask the 4 words. What is the one thing? Then stop talking and wait, and the waiting will feel like failure for the entire duration, and it is not. Expect a face, a sentence, or a pull. Expect it to feel flat and obvious. Expect a small flinch attached to it, and treat the flinch as identification rather than as objection. Then, within 60 seconds and before you speak to anyone, write it down. 1 line, a verb and a name. Attach an hour to it before your feet touch the floor. An actual time today. Tell nobody until it is done. Then do it and expect nothing to happen afterward. And do not let the flatness talk you out of the next morning. That is the entire protocol. 4 minutes, 4 words, 60 seconds, 1 hour. You will not need to hear this message again to run it. And I want to name something specific now that I have been circling all night and have not landed on directly, because most of the letters I receive are about it, and pretending otherwise would be dishonest. For a great many of you, the pressure right now is financial. There is a number you are behind on. There is a month coming that does not work on paper. There is a job you have stayed in 4 years past the point of reason because leaving is a risk you cannot price. There is a conversation about money you have not had with someone you live with because the last one went badly. And you have been waiting for a divine intervention that arrives in the shape of a sum. I am not going to promise you that. I do not know your circumstances, and anyone who promises you a figure and a date is doing something to you rather than for you. What I will tell you is what I have watched happen repeatedly and what it has to do with everything in this message. The people who come out of long financial pressure almost never come out through an event. They come out through a sequence of small, accurate movements that were available the whole time and could not be seen from inside a narrow channel. A conversation with somebody they already knew, a skill they already had that they had never named as a skill because it came easily, a cost they had normalized, a door they assumed was closed because they had not touched it since 2019. Provision is rarely hidden. It is usually adjacent and unrecognized, and recognition is a function of the state of the receiver. That is the honest version. Not that money is going to arrive because you obeyed, but that a person operating with the whole instrument sees options that a person operating on one channel walks past every single day. And enough of those options taken in sequence is what a turnaround actually looks like from the inside while it is happening. It will not feel like a miracle while it is occurring. It will feel like a series of slightly better decisions. And then 18 months later, you will look back and be unable to identify the moment it turned. So do not sit in the window tomorrow asking for a sum. Sit in it asking, what is the one thing? And be willing for the answer to be small, and be willing for the small thing to be about a person rather than about your situation. The two are connected more often than anyone expects. Chosen one, listen to me now, because I am nearly finished, and this is the part I most want you to keep. You came into this message believing something about yourself, and I want to say plainly what it was, because you have probably never said it out loud. You believed you were the problem, not in a dramatic way, quietly as a settled fact, the way people hold conclusions they stopped examining years ago. You believed that other people receive, and you do not, and that the difference is something in you, and that you have never been able to locate it or fix it, and that after this long, the most likely explanation is that this is simply what you are. That was never true. It was never true for a single day of the years you believed it. You were never the problem. You were the one carrying something with the wrong instrument, in the dark, uphill, without instructions, for a very long time, and you did not put it down. Most people put it down. That is not a criticism of them. It is very heavy, and there is no shame in setting down a weight you were never told how to carry. You did not put it down. That is who you are, and it is the only thing that was ever required, and it has been true about you the entire time you were doubting it. So let us finish the way this should be finished. Wherever you are right now, whatever room you are in, whatever hour it is where you are sitting, I want you to stop moving for the last few minutes of this. There is nothing left to learn. Everything practical has been given, and you already have it. What remains is different, and it needs you still. Something is being released over you tonight, and I want to name it precisely rather than generally, because vague blessing is a kind of politeness, and you have not come this far for politeness. What is being released is not opportunity. You have had opportunities and could not see them. It is not favor in the abstract. It is not a season change, and it is not a door. What is being released is recognition, the ability to know what you are looking at when it is placed in front of you. That is the thing that has been missing, and it is the thing being returned. Let it be said over you now. Let the narrowing that happened without your consent begin to loosen. Let the training that taught you to disregard what you knew begin to lose its authority over what you know. Let the half of you that has been speaking without being heard for 30 years be heard again by the only person who ever needed to hear it, which is you. Let the file close, the one you have been adding to since you were young, the one where every unacted impulse was recorded as evidence against your own character. Let it close, and let it not be reopened, because it was always the wrong file, and the entries were always miscategorized. Let the low sound underneath your days go quiet, not because you have been given peace as a feeling, because the thing generating it is being answered. And let the room with the table remain open to you. You will forget most of this message by Friday. That is normal, and it is fine, and it is not a failure of attention. But you will not forget the room, because you saw it rather than heard about it, and things that are seen stay. Every morning that room is available. It has always been available. Now you know where it is. Chosen one, hear this, and then let it be finished. You are not the one who ignored the task. You are the one who could not read it, and you can read it now. You are not behind, and you are not late, and there is not a version of your life running somewhere without you in it. You are not carrying what you are carrying because you failed at something. You are carrying it because you were the one who did not put it down. And what has been waiting patiently, 4 times over, without complaint, and it will be there in the morning. If you receive this, declare it in the comments. Now let me pray over you, and then I am going to be quiet and let you go. Father, for the one listening to this right now, in whatever room they are in, at whatever hour this reached them, you have watched every year of it. The ones that looked wasted and the ones that were. The prayers said out loud and the ones that never got as far as words. The obedience nobody witnessed. The staying. The not putting it down. Restore what was taken quietly and slowly and without anyone's consent. Not the circumstances first. The instrument first. Return to this one the ability to know what they are looking at. Let tomorrow morning be different in a way that requires no drama to be real. Let the window open. Let the item come. Let it come plainly and let it come small, and let this one recognize it anyway, because they have been told tonight what it looks like. And let there be, on the other end of it, a person who has been waiting a long time and does not know they were being answered. Guard the 4 minutes. Guard them from the phone and from the list, and from the noise that has taken those minutes every day for years, without ever once being noticed. Let the flinch not be obeyed. Let it be recognized and let it be walked through. And for the ones listening who are afraid this will be one more thing they start and do not finish, let it be easier than they expect. Let the first one be small enough to survive their own doubt. Whatever has benefited from this one, operating at half of what they are, let its arrangement be broken tonight, not with noise, quietly, the way it was built. And let the years of silence be recategorized in this one's memory tonight, not as absence, but as delivery attempts against a receiver that no one had told them was down. Amen. Stay still one more minute. There is a commissioning, and then I will let you go. You are being sent, and I want to be careful with that word, because sent has been used badly, and it usually means somebody is about to ask you for something large. Sent here means something very small and very specific. It means there is a distance of about 11 minutes between you and one person, and you are the one crossing it. That is the commission, that is all of it. You are not being sent to change a nation. You are not being asked to build anything. You are not being handed a mandate that requires you to become someone other than who you are between now and the morning. You are being sent across a room, and I want to release a few things over the parts of your life that have been under pressure, because a person cannot cross a room while they are drowning, and some of you are drowning. Over your finances, not a sum, a sequence. Let the adjacent thing become visible. Let the skill you have never counted be counted. Let the door you assumed was closed be tried once. Let the conversation you have been avoiding about money be had, badly if necessary, and let the badly had conversation be better than the 4 years of silence it replaces. Over your body. It has been carrying the alertness of a person who has been braced for a long time, and bracing has a cost that shows up in the jaw and the shoulders and the sleep. Let the bracing come down, not because the pressure is gone, but because the file is closed, and a body knows when a file closes, even when the mind has not caught up. Over your relationships, let the thinning that has been happening be understood correctly. Some of what has fallen away was falling away because you were changing, and it was not rejection, and it was not your fault, and it did not require an argument. And let the 2 or 3 who remained be seen properly, because you have been so occupied with the ones who left that you have not thanked the ones who stayed. Over the years you would delete. Let them stop being evidence. Let them become inventory. Let the thing you understand from the inside be usable rather than only survivable. Over the name that has been surfacing for 9 years, let there be somebody on the other end still reachable, and let the reaching be simpler than you fear. And over the 4 minutes tomorrow morning, let them be protected. Let nothing require you before you have asked. Let the child sleep the extra 10 minutes. Let the message wait. Let the day begin after you rather than before you. For the first time in a very long while. Chosen one, here is the last thing. You have spent a very long time trying to hear a voice. And what I hope you take from tonight is that you were never failing to hear. You were failing to file. The material was arriving and going into the wrong drawer, and drawers can be relabeled in an evening. There is nothing wrong with your hearing. There never was. Everything you have been calling silence has been correspondence you could not open. Everything you have been calling failure has been an unopened envelope on a table in a room you did not know you had. Everything you have been calling a wasted decade has been a ledger filling up with material for an errand that takes 11 minutes and matters to one person more than you will ever be told. And everything you have been calling too late has been something waiting patiently, without complaint, for the